Middle managers, once looked at as the backbone of organizational structure and leadership, are now getting laid off across industries in Canada and beyond. We're talking major corporations trimming managerial layers as they restructure, reinvent, and look at how work gets done. Canada Post to telecom to government, employers are making tough calls as the landscape for people with manager in their title is shifting dramatically. I'm Stephanie Matisse with At Work with Howard Levitt. You probably know Howard's popular columns in the Financial Post. This is the companion piece where we dig deeper and offer you practical takeaways and unforgettable stories. Howard, a year ago you wrote the middle management call is coming to Canada too. It seems that we're living it now.
Well, part of practicing over 45 years is you've seen it all. And you've seen it all magnified and reflected and returning.
This is part of a cycle.
Yes.
You wrote that column a year ago, and then sure enough, you are currently writing columns about those exact changes happening in Canada. Can you tell me about that?
Well, I talked about Bell Canada being a master class in how to let people go. Because in federal jurisdiction, which Bell Canada is, federally regulated companies, you can let go managers and just pay wrongful dismissal damages, just cost you some money. But you can't lay off, other than certain circumstances, line workers, people who are below senior management actually, because they can actually get their jobs back and get reinstated in a fairly quick remedy compared to going to court. So Bell Canada, not being able to let go the junior people so easily, got rid of masses of middle management. And especially with AI coming, they found a lot of the managerial functions are redundant or can be done with less. So they are paying a one-time cost of termination pay. You freed yourself of that salary. It makes a whole lot of sense from a company standpoint to let go middle managers.
That is the group that you're saying is most at risk.
Yes, they are the most at risk. You need the line people to do the line jobs. Generally speaking, you need workers on the floor delivering product, giving product, servicing customers, running the machines. But middle management is more dispensable. So people work their whole career to get up to middle management, to get that income, to have that job security, and all of a sudden it's the most insecure job of all.
And it's just gone.
And gone.
What are the economic pressures or the competitive realities that are forcing companies to rethink their org charts?
Well, there's obviously the Trump tariffs. That's significant. There's internationalization and commoditization. And here's something else people don't think about. Remote work. If I'm going to hire an employee and I could pay them $110,000 a year, or I could pay them $25,000 a year for the same job, for the same type of work, for the same quality, what am I going to pick? If you can hire somebody in India remotely, are they really any different than the Canadian who's working remotely at $110,000 a year? So a lot of these positions are now being taken by foreigners because of the ubiquity of remote work. So that's another reason why middle management is very, very vulnerable right now. We saw it in the call center industry, where it's been, frankly, offshored forever, but now we're seeing it in middle management too. And you see executive search firms and placement agencies going around the world recruiting because you can get people much cheaper, and it's killing our economy.
You know, you talked about seeing this in cycles and that you've seen this before. Is there anything different right now?
When there's recessions, companies look to who they can downsize because otherwise the companies themselves won't survive. So they downsize middle management. It's happened before.
So then what happens? Does that sector resurge?
Historically, it's resurged, but maybe not this time.
You think it's different this time?
Because of AI.
Yeah, and also because of the global ability to
hire remotely. Will the government clamp down on that? I don't know if it will or it won't. But if you can hire from around the world, that's the reality. And we're importing laws because, of course, we're hiring them pursuant to the employment standards and legal regimes in their countries if they get fired. Companies do that without even thinking through those implications. So that plus AI suggests to me a structural shift.
What does it mean for employers who might have to offer rationale for letting those positions or employees go?
I've never known companies to particularly have to use rationale.
Well, what we hear a lot is restructuring.
Yeah, well, it's restructuring. I'm not sure that answers anybody's question. We are restructuring, we're downsizing, or if profits are reducing, we got to do it to stay alive, to stay competitive. Or we're too rich an organization in terms of the number of people, we need to be flatter.
Are employers or companies at risk through this?
Well, every employee who's downsized is a case for wrongful dismissal, of course.
For an
Everybody
assessment for that, you mean? In terms of,
every employee downsized or restructured or reorganized or displaced or whatever euphemism you want to use has a good wrongful dismissal case. That's a classic without cause discharge.
So tell me more about that. What are the considerations?
Well, age, length of service, position, reemployability, and of course, with it happening everywhere, the reemployability is terrible, and reemployability is the single biggest factor in wrongful dismissal damages. People get it wrong. They think it's length of service. You get people work 2 weeks, courts give a year's pay to. People work 30 years, courts give 14 months pay to. It's not just length of service. The most single important factor in how much severance, how much wrongful dismissal damages somebody's going to get is how hard it's going to be for them to find other work. That's factor number one. Length of service is probably two. They look at age, their position, their remuneration. But even those things come down to, other than length of service, come down to reemployability. If they're older, they're less employable. If their position is more senior, they're less employable. It's all reemployability.
I'm going to make an assumption that a lot of middle managers have put in time at the company where they are and have grown with it. Does that mean that they have a strong case for wrongful dismissal?
They have a perfect case for wrongful dismissal. If a middle manager is fired because of restructuring, or for any reason at all short of serious gross misconduct after warnings, they've got a case for wrongful dismissal. And
so
by
even
the way,
if the company's restructuring,
restructuring is not an offense. No, they've got a full wrongful dismissal case, and there's a bit of a misconception too. If somebody does a crappy job, they get just as much money in wrongful dismissal as the best employee in the company. That's not even a factor courts look at. So any downsized middle manager has a great case for wrongful dismissal. And by the way, companies know that. They're offering them all packages, but they don't offer them the best packages. They try and save money.
Is that true all the time?
Oh, about 99.9% of the time, yes. Nobody's going to give the best offer. In fact, they fire them expecting them to come back asking for more.
Or hoping they won't, right?
They hope they won't.
People are afraid of litigation, right? That it is intimidating, I think, to come to you and have this conversation. And they are going through the hardest period in their lives, more than likely, because they've just lost their livelihood. It's emotional, but you're saying put that aside. Come talk to me because you likely have a wrongful dismissal case.
So let's assume the company offers them 6 months' pay, but they end up being unemployed a year and a half. They've signed that release right off the bat, and the 6 months run out, and now they're really in deep trouble for the next 12 months. I'm going to tell them what the case is really worth. They can decide how far they want to go, and one case in 100 or less actually gets to trial. Very early on in the case, there's mediation, where a mediator comes in and resolves it. In most cases, settle at mediation fairly early on in the process. But you're not going to be taken seriously if you don't have counsel. If you try and negotiate yourself, the company says, okay, they're afraid of paying legal fees. We won't be very generous with that person. But they've got someone like me on the other side. They understand, look, here's what happens when they've got me on the other side. They're going to end up paying what the case is worth, at least. And they're going to pay a portion of my costs, and they're going to pay all of their own lawyers' costs.
You're talking about the companies.
The company.
Yeah.
The company is in a terrible position if I'm suing them on behalf of one of their employees, because if they don't settle quickly, they're going to get not just a settlement plus interest, they're also going to have to pay all their own lawyers' fees along the way, and a chunk of my legal fees along the way. It's going to cost them a lot more than just settling in the first place. So, but they're going to say, is that lawyer someone who's really going to take us all the way, or are they just looking for a quick contingency and get out of it? When I have a case, I look at the lawyer on the other side. I get some insight into their person on the other side from my client, whether it's a company or whether it's an employee. But more important, who's their lawyer? Is it someone who's going to collapse like a bad suit as soon as I push, has never done a trial in their life, and most employment lawyers haven't? Or is it someone who is going to be a significant adversary, someone who I have to take seriously? So if a lawyer says, oh, I'm a great negotiator, well, first of all, I never go to court. Well, that's not the last person you want to be with, because what I'm going to look at is whether that person can go to court and can do a good job in advising my client what to offer.
Are you saying that if I'm a middle manager and I've just been let go, that you can go through this legal process And it's really not going to cost them anything because in the end, the company will end up paying all of the costs.
Well, it depends on the case, whether they pay all the costs or portion of the costs. But they're going to pay a portion of the cost for sure. I'm not going to take a case where the person isn't going to be dramatically better off from using my firm's services. Dramatically better off, where the vast majority of any money is going to go to them. Otherwise, I won't take the case. I'll tell them right up front, look, I might write a demand letter and see where it goes, but I'm not going to enter into litigation with them if it's not worth their while. Because that's how I get my reputation. That's how I get my referrals, by clients walking away saying, boy, I just made a lot of money. Thank God. Glad I went to that firm.
Flipping this to the employers, instead of just letting people go, you've written about alternatives to that idea. Do you want to talk about that?
Working notice, I think you're referring to.
I am referring to advance written notice?
Yes. You can say to them in a letter right now, 12 months from now is your last day of work. That's equivalent to giving them a year's pay. And the employer gets work for the next year. Now, most employers don't do that. They're afraid of sabotage. They're afraid of confidentiality breaches. That's nonsense.
Productivity probably
Productivity
tanks.
issues. But you know what? The employee wants to get a reference. They want to find something else that motivates them to get out of the place and find another job. Or if they're in a lawsuit, they're motivated to stay unemployed, keep up their damages. It changes all the motivations. No contingency lawyer is going to touch the case if they're on working notice. And the employer saves money.
But no one really does that.
I think it will increase now that I've written about it. Some of my new clients have contacted me saying, what's that all about?
It is a really interesting concept. Yeah. Can we talk about the emotionality of this for a minute? Because these people, as I said, are coming to you at this terrible time. What do you want to say about people who are extremely emotional, feeling vulnerable because they've been let go at this stage in their careers?
Well, going through a dismissal is like going through the 7 stages of death, if you're familiar with that. And I try and help them through those stages and try and stabilize them and let them understand I'm going to do the fighting. They're not going to do the fighting. They've got a very limited role in the process. I'll call you when I need you. Just get on with your life. Litigation's a bit like jumping into a cold lake. It's uncomfortable initially, and then you sort of get used to it, and it stops being painful after a fairly short time. But you can't afford to not get what you're entitled to. You can't afford to be that person who takes their 6 months and then is unemployed for 18 months when they could have got 18 months and covered their entire period of unemployment. You can't afford it. You owe it to yourself, you owe it to your family, you owe it to your dignity, you owe it to your self-respect. Yeah. And by the way, if you take the 6 months, think the employer respects you? No. And also, if you're suing them or threatening to sue them, they want you to get a job quickly. It's in the employer's interest for you to be reemployed quickly. If you've already signed a release, they don't care.
If you accept what's offered when you're let go, does that preclude your involvement?
If I've signed a release, the case is over. I have no case.
So the advice there is talk to a lawyer.
Find out what your case is worth and make sure the lawyer knows what they're doing, that they really are a specialist, that they're trial hardened, they're going to be respected by their opponent, and to make sure they're just not creations of advertising. They're real counsel with a real track record.
That's it for today with At Work with Howard Levitt. If you want to meet Howard and his team, the best place to start is at levittllp.com. You'll find all kinds of information, including how to request a consultation. I'm Stephanie Matisse. Thanks for listening.